Hotep family, for you that do not know, Hotep represents unshakable inner peace. And that's how I greet you, and that is how I will leave you, right? So give me a moment. I need to share this to my social media. They got me jumping through hoops to get it right. So just give me a moment, I ask of you. Mm-mm-mm-mm. There we go. How your day going? Yeah, mine is great so far, and it's gonna get greater. I promise. I'm very happy that it's Friday. Shout out to my sister Megan. Happy born day, Queen. Enjoy to the fullest. I'll probably put a post up later with my wife just saying happy birthday. Maybe we go get a little cupcake and something and send you uh birthday money and just we celebrating you. We like you. We miss y'all. Buffalo, we miss y'all. We coming to see y'all soon. We miss all of you. We won't be there long, so we're gonna be pressed for time. We're gonna be in and out, but we miss you, man. It ain't nothing like Buffalo. But I'll tell you what, I love waking up to these mornings in Charlotte. We went and saw the what do you call that? I guess it would be like the like same like in Buffalo, like when the sun is coming up. What is that called when you see the cast of the sun over the main part of the city or the highlighted part of the city, like downtown? But here is uptown. Skyline. Yo, Charlotte has one of the most beautiful skylines I ever saw. It remind me of Atlanta. They like compete with each other. Like, I love it. I love it. I gotta admit. Um, it was a little cool last night. Not too cold, like 59, but it was like 79. Today it's gonna be like 81. Listen, man, let's get some money and all y'all move out here and we just create our own community. I'm telling you, man, we about to have a little tiny community, man. Yeah, we gotta do what we gotta do, grow some vegetation, build our own schools, build our own defense and protection system, build our own banks. Remember, I was telling y'all on Facebook, man, just imagine we all took our money out of the banks and put it in our own bank. Do you know the magnitude of what would transpire? How do we be able to get loans to build our businesses as well as just reinforce what it is? Like, can you imagine all Black people or African people or Africans in America? Because a lot of us don't really realize that. I know a lot of people say that they Native American, they Hispanic, they this, they that. But when you get to the essence of things, there was one original people that created all people. Why do we avoid that? Because we're conditioned to, because of the symbols and images that they project as our reality, which it is not. It's a clear setup to keep them in power. We can easily regain our birthright and our power by uniting wholly and undividedly, by loving on one another and not letting anything come between that. I was saying when I posted something this morning, I posted a throwback about the incident that happened May 14th in Buffalo, New York, and my response when I called out Black men in Buffalo. And in that response, I had to review it. It was very empowering for me to just see myself, in the height of the moment through my studies and through my efforts, breaking down, like what we going through, you know what I mean? And what we could do about it. That's the more important part, not so much what we're going through, what we could do about it. But if you just gonna walk past like it's nothing, ain't nothing gonna get done. And the only people obligated to do something for us is us. Yeah. Right. I lost my train of thought, but I think I was saying that because um I don't really remember. I ain't gonna lie to y'all. I've been so hype about being out here and getting active and pushing forward to create these new opportunities that I'm taking advantage of. Me and wifey, taking advantage of. I ain't really got no sleep, y'all. I be sleep for like 2-3 hours. I get up, I get to study it again, get to write notes, get to reflecting over some of the classes. You know what I mean? And that's whether it be real estate or whether it be building websites and social media accounts. Just studying, like really upping my game, upping my understanding. As you see, I changed the name to Omnipotent the Reading Cipher. You'll be surprised that I did not know how to do that. And I probably know a lot of people that did, but nobody told me, right? Oh, let me post this in here. Join me for yeah. So, but yo, big shout out to my sis. Also, shout out to my cousin Netta. You know what I mean? Yeah, I ain't forgot about you. Nah. And I know probably people gonna be like, well, he didn't post this on Facebook. Man, I posted this on YouTube. It ain't going nowhere. Yeah, before I did anything, I shout you out. You know what? Shout out to all ancestors known and unknown. Shout out to the brothers and sisters that's going to celebrate Umoja Karamu, which is the fourth Sunday of November, as opposed to the Europeans' Thanksgiving. Shout out to the brothers and sisters that are going to celebrate Kwanzaa as opposed to Christmas. You know what happens the day after Kwanzaa, right? Yeah, it's my born day. And also, I don't know who you are, but starting on my birthday, on my born day, pardon me, if I know you, if I don't know you, you can do it too, but I need to know your born day, and you're going to have to drop me some bread on my born day. So what I do is, this is a birthday pool, and in the birthday pool, you give $50 to whoever birthday it is, right? So if you want to be part of my birthday pool, I'm doing this months in advance, like 2 months in advance. Email me your birthday. Email me your name and your birth date, and I probably need like your Cash App or your PayPal or your Zelle. I'd prefer, I ain't gonna lie to you, I'd prefer for you to just give me your Cash App. It's just much easier for me. But I don't have a problem doing PayPal either. Zelle and Venmo, I can probably do, but I got difficulties. I know, man, I ain't had it all together. I'm just piecing it together now. You heard? What else? So yeah, if you want to join my birthday pool, right? I need your date of birth. I need your Cash App. You can email that to omnipotentjaka@gmail.com. O as in Oscar, M as in Mary, N as in Nancy, I as in Islam, P as in power, O as in Oscar, N as in Nancy, E as in equal, N as in Nancy, T as in truth, J as in John, A as in Apple, H as in hero, K as in king, A as in apple @gmail.com, right? If you like what I'm doing, or you want to give me some feedback or discuss, or if you want me to bring you in on a future show or what have you, you can email me there, or you can also reach out to me on my business line at 347-674-3651. That's 347-674-3651. Also, all of you that have joined, or those of you that will join and go into my videos, look in the description. There are some free resources there for you. Yeah, some free resources. Just a little something that I found that I would be able to share with the people, so I can give them a little something for giving me viewer support, because I definitely appreciate it. You know, we great by ourselves, but we're immaculate when we're together. Unicity is undivided wholeness. And I'm telling y'all, when we stick together, ain't nothing like it. That's why we've always had the greatest love. That's why we've always been everywhere on God's green earth, right? I just feel good, and I hope that I'm passing on this positive energy to you. So without further ado, I'm going to hop right into part 3 of Blueprint for Black Power by the Honorable Dr. Amos Wilson. The instrumental use of force, the title of this part of the first chapter is Coercion. Coercion as power. The instrumental use of force, or the threatened use of force by the power holder to obtain the compliance of another, is often referred to as coercion. Coercion is therefore a form of power. It is the utmost importance to note, as did wrong, that a coercer may succeed without possessing either the capability or the intention of using force, so long as the power subject believes he possesses both. Emphasis added. That is, the coercive power of the power holder may rest significantly, less or not at all, on his actual capacity to harm the subject, but may rest more or less to do so. Pardon me. But may rest more or less completely on the subordinate subject's belief that the power holder can do so. This perspective, commonly referred to as bluffing, allows us to recognize the fact that in many instances, power holders exercise power over their subjects because of the subject's misperceptions and misunderstandings or false beliefs about the power holder's ability to restrict their options or possibilities. Wartenberg refers to this situation as the Oz phenomenon, for it shows that agents are able to coerce other agents by acting upon their beliefs rather than by controlling their action environment directly. He further contends, let me move this light closer to me, you heard, because I don't know if it's the here. I believe that's what it is. So let me tie that up real quick. And part of that I keep breaking, but like I said, man, I'm not perfect. I'm striving for perfection, and I'm hoping that you continue to join me as I do. But let's continue. He further contends, while the ability of the dominant agent to create the subordinate subject may rest heavily on the subject's exaggerated misperception of the dominant agent's actual capacity to do him harm, equally and often of greater importance, the ability of the dominant agent to coerce the subject may rest on the subject's misperception and underestimation of his own capacity to successfully thwart the coercive or punitive actions of the dominant agent. The often anemic self-concept of subordinate persons and groups, their low self-esteem, their ignorance of their actual strengths are more the causes of their subordination than is the actual strength of their oppressors. The long history of white American domination of Black Americans, which has been enforced and reinforced by the use of physical force and violence, psychic violence, and coercive power, has in effect convinced the majority of Blacks that whites are invincible. Moreover, this history has undermined the self-confidence of most Blacks, narrowed their vision of their possibilities and power, restricted their aspirations to the narrow confines of racial accommodation and assimilation, to being the paternalistic recipients of white sympathy rather than expanding their aspirations to include the overcoming of white power and achieving full, unfettered self-liberation. The unending maintenance of this self-defeating state of mind in Blacks is the fundamental objective of white power and the keystone upon which the infrastructural facade of white power rests. We are not arguing here that white power is purely delusional or does not contain truly lethal actualities. However, we are arguing that if Black Americans and Africans the world over do not permit themselves to be psyched out by white racist propaganda, if they both recognize and actualize their potential to neutralize white power in either its imagined or actual forms, they can by these means neutralize it. The productivity of coercion. We can recall from our prior discussion that the use of force is essentially socially negative, expensive, and prone to provoke overt resistance to its application by those subjected to it. We also intimated that force is essentially restrictive and preventative in character, more effective in obstructing people's behavior than in causing them to behave in certain productive ways. Coercion, in contrast to the use of raw force, permits the power holder to benefit more readily from the subordinate subject's actions and reactions. According to Wartenberg, unlike force, coercive power actually functions by getting an agent to do something. The logic of the threat is precisely its positing in an action. The logic of the threat is precisely its positing an action that an agent is able to forestall by acting in an inappropriate manner. For Wartenberg, coercive power is productive in that 1, it produces action on the part of the subordinate subject, and 2, because the actions of the subordinate subject elicited by coercive threat may actually produce something of value or benefit to the coercive power holder. The scope of coercive power, particularly in its political institutional forms, is, as argues, wrong, at least in the short run. undoubtedly the most effective form of power in extensiveness, comprehensiveness, and intensity. However, despite its efficiency and productivity relative to force, the exercise of coercive power, like the exercise of force, may be expensive, socially and politically costly, and provokes resistance from those subjected to its application. Because the subjects of coercive power are aware of its application against them and realize that freedom to act has been threatened or restricted, they resent such an imposition and may attempt to break or thwart the power holder's coercive power over them. The use of coercive power as its chief means of control often means that the dominant group must maintain constant surveillance and must constantly keep itself fully informed as to the thoughts, attitudes, and activities of its subjects. Consequently, to the cost of acquiring and maintaining the means of protection if they are an owning class, the cost of procuring, maintaining, and deploying the means of force and violence must be added. The cost of information gathering and espionage operations, wrong. The relative inefficiency, counterproductivity, and costliness of exercising force and coercive power as the primary means for dominating other groups serve to motivate power holding groups to develop other more effective but less obvious or intrusive ways of exercising coercive force and power so as to reduce, if not eliminate altogether, the reactive resentment and resistance of their subordinate subjects. This end is accomplished when power holders discover and utilize ways and means of obscuring or hiding the use of coercion by inducing misperceptions and misunderstandings among their subjects about whether they are actually being coerced or are being subjected to a power play. The other forms of power we shall discuss below have in good part been developed and are utilized to obscure the actual nature of the coercive power relationship between power holders and their subjects. However, we should note at this juncture that the ability of power holders to obscure their coercive and exploitative actions from their subjects will be critically successful to the degree that their subjects have not developed and utilized their own analytical and critical, perceptive, and creative capacities to see through and subvert the hidden coercive machine. I don't know this word, but I'm going to try my best to pronounce it. Machinations, Machinations, machinations. Tell me what it is. This is y'all homework. I bring the material. I provide the material. Where I mess up, y'all supposed to help me out. And what y'all don't understand that I know, I'm supposed to help y'all with. This is a equal relationship, an equal opportunity. You get to teach me, I get to teach you. Put it in the comments or call me or email me, however you want to do. And intentions of their oppressors. Influence is power. Influence occurs when a person acts in compliance with the wishes or directions or suggestions of another based on his sheer positive regard for love and admiration of the other, or based on the desire to please or serve the other because of the other's personal significance to him. Influence is achieved when the subject's behavioral compliance is attained without the influential party having to possess, use force, coercion, material rewards, and making appeals to authority. This is especially the case when the subject complies with the wishes, suggestions, or commands of the other while engaging in no relevant, independent, or deliberate thinking, reasoning, or rational processes whatsoever, or when the subject complies out of a conditioned habit of obedience in regard to the other. On that note, I'd like to remind you that this is the reason I follow no religion. I found the origin of the main religions that I feel hold us back as a people. Right. And I'm not knocking you if you believe in a religion. This has nothing to do with your belief, nothing at all. I'm just referring to what was stated here. But not just that. Also, when it comes to this so-called voting and stuff like that, we just do what we was told. We don't deliberately think. We just do what they say without recognizing how much they have corrupted our lives, corrupted our livelihood, and how they have boxed us in specifically economically, but as well as to some degree socially, right? So I'm going to just stop commenting because I'd rather the doctor speak because he's going to say it all. It's just going to take him some time to say it because he's so thorough. And if you're not understanding this, it's okay. It's okay. In time, you will. Sometimes you got to hear a thing 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 19, 30, 40, 50 times before you get it. Some people, they just get it right away. Some people, they get a piece of it and they just got to go back over it. But that's why this is being recorded. So you can come back here over and over and over and over again. And even better than that, it should inspire you to go and get the book so you can read it for yourself. And maybe you can teach me something that I didn't pick up or that I didn't speak, so that others can gain some access to the knowledge that you have, so that we can all be on the same page. You dig? Again, this is the reading cipher. This is the place where we come and make it safe to listen and read to things that will uplift us, things that will empower us and encourage us to create the leadership that's needed in our community. Remember, these entertainers are not your leaders at all. None of these entertainers, the majority of these public figures, they're not your leaders. Your leaders is the common man that go to work and take care of his family. Your leaders is the common woman that go to work and take care of her family. Your leaders are the black man and woman struggling to maintain whatever it is they got and build more without falling victim to what society is telling them to do and what's cool and what's all right. Man, it's time to have our own. Without struggle, there's no progress. And I believe the great Frederick Douglass said that. But really think about it. What have you really gained that's worthwhile that wasn't a little difficult, a little hard to acquire, that required some work? Come on. If you got a relationship and it was just easy to get, it's probably not the relationship for you. If in your relationship you never have any friction, never have any disagreements, and I don't mean you got to be calling anybody out of their name or cussing them out or anything. Y'all can really have a difference of opinion. But it's the comprehension through the communication that's the key, right? Without progress, pardon me, without struggle, there is no progress. And I'm saying, let's just struggle. Nah, the time for us struggling is over. You can have exactly the life you deserve, but you must start putting in that time. The most successful couples, if they don't have it all together right now, they go to work, come home, and work 2 to 3 hours on their business every day until they get it right. And you know what's really crazy about that? The people that get up, the people that come up the fastest are couples. Within 6 to 7 months of dedicating 2 to 3 hours, 4 to 6 days a week, and so for some people it's just every day, right? Some people only do it twice a week. But I've seen it in many, 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 many companies. Man, and many, many startups, a lot of people are able to leave their job and create the life they deserve and be making money in their sleep. Now, why aren't you doing that? You know why? Because you haven't committed to doing it. That's the only reason why. Whether you know it or not, it's too much free-flowing information for us to act like we can't get it. I don't care who called you dumb before. I don't care if you had a certain IEP in school. I don't care about any of it. I don't care if you can't read. If you can't read, you're smart enough to be able to pull people together that you know that are smart, that can teach you and that can help you and that can guide you in doing whatever it is that's needed to be done. And I'll give you a story to refer to that, and I'll get back to the story. The guy Ford, I forgot his first name, but Ford, the guy that's known for the Ford company, he didn't have a great education, but he knew how to put people with a great mind together. And he gave them a challenge that they couldn't really get it together. But once you start to focus, once your mind starts to focus on the thing, even if it isn't here, because everything you see was created with a thought first. Everything you see was created with a thought first, right? So that's the birth of everything. And once you start focusing on that new outcome that you want, your mind does this incredible thing. It starts to refocus and start drawing things in that bring you that outcome. That's why it's really important to say such positive things to yourself, because the negative stuff will automatically just overrun your mind because it's on autopilot, because there's so many symbols and things and sounds that are encouraging it and reinstituting it. But if you start practicing and doing the opposite and controlling what you listen to, where you at, what environments you choose to be around, and the experiences you give yourself, I promise you, your life could be as incredible as you desire it to be. I'm not saying there won't be ups and downs, because that comes with life, but you could really have the life you deserve. This light, that's what it was. So the light is blinding me. But I needed the light because it's dim in here. They don't have great lighting in this apartment. And we won't even be here long. I'm gonna let y'all know that. I do like this apartment. I sort of like the neighborhood outside. The shooters in the back, they tripping. They tripping. They should go to the range. They ain't did too much lately. They only did it they only shot around like once or twice in the last 10 days. I know you like that's still too much. I know, right? However, despite wait. I'm on a whole nother page. I'm sorry. Wartenberg mentions two important types. Y'all gotta give me a second for my eyes to adjust. Oh man, that was big. Wartenberg mentions two important types of influence with which we are familiar: rational persuasion and personal persuasion. He also mentions a third, expertise, which we discuss as competent authority presently. In the first instance, the subject retains the use of his critical or rational faculties, but is led to reassess his understanding or perception of a situation. You know what? Let me use this. Pardon me. I know I keep stopping, but y'all gotta give me a second. Remember, man, I gotta knock the dust off. It's been a long time since I did this out loud. In the first instance, the subject retains the use of his critical or rational faculties, but is led to reassess his understanding or perception of a situation or of reality, or to accept as reasonable or correct the conclusions reached and recommendations suggested by the other as in the result of the other's apparently logical argumentation or reasoning. In the second instance, the subject's behavioral compliance, the wishes to satisfy the desires of the other as he perceives them to exist. As Wartenberg posits, the central feature of influence via personal persuasion is that the influence agent does not make her choices on the basis of reasons that she can present in the form of rational argument. Form of persuasion might be referred to as propagandistic persuasion, wherein through various media and forms of indoctrination techniques, the subject is influenced to accept certain opinions or beliefs which lead him or her to think that he or her is acting in his or her own interest when this really is not the case. Influence as power involves the power holder's ability to gain the subordinate subject's voluntary acceptance of and behavioral compliance with the power holder's interpretations of reality, value judgments, prescriptive suggestions, and commands based on the power holder's perceived status, resources, personal and social attributes, competence, expertise, or legitimate authority. When power holders as a group possess a monopoly of their positions of influence due to historical and other social factors, they may use their influence as a means to secure and obscure their possession of other types of power, and at times render unnecessary the naked use of force and coercion. Influence requires that the subject subordinates his judgment to that of the other, that he is guided by the judgment of the other. As such, influence is a more secure and hidden form of power, in that the influenced subject complies with the demands of the power holder, either without questioning the role or motives of the power holder, or after being persuaded by the power holder's apparently logical argumentation. Consequently, influence as a type of power, as a type of rational, personal, propagandistic persuasion, may serve to render the possession and exercise of other types of power unnecessary and more secure, or to obscure them altogether. Thus, influence may itself function as an exceedingly potent or subtle form of power. To a very significant extent, white domination of blacks, which initially and until relatively recently was expressed in terms of physical force coercion, the threatened use of force along with occasional use, now expresses itself as influence. By means of the various forms of influence we have discussed, whites dominate blacks without appearing to deliberately do so, and without having to revert to the sheer use of force and coercion. Consequently, they convince or persuade many blacks to behave in ways compatible with maintaining white power and incompatible with generating black power, while blacks self-deceptively think that such behavior on their part is purely voluntary, reasonable, or obligatory. This situation evolves from blacks having accepted Eurocentric frames of reference and perceptions of reality. Only by choosing to accept and live by an Afrocentric frame of reference will blacks escape the dispowering white influence and correspondingly enhance their own power. Must repeat this statement. Only by choosing to accept and live by an Afrocentric frame of reference will blacks escape the disempowering white influence and correspondingly enhance their own power. So for that, I'd like to invite you every Monday when the Jefferson Library, the Meriwether Library at Jefferson Avenue and East Utica Street is open from 4 to 6 p.m. Join the African Conscious Workshop if you're in Buffalo, New York. If you're here in Charlotte, reach out to me. 347-674-3651. We can start our own little group and we can do it at home and we can get to reading books, watching just all of the things that we do at the African Conscious Workshop. It's not like one thing. We do a variety of things. And after you show up, like 4 weeks in a row, or you got 4 times when you show up, you can request to host one of the workshops and teach us something that we might not all know, or we might need to understand better, or just something that we may need to remember that you can refresh it for us, right? Let me see how many pages I got before, because I know I got you on here. What I got y'all on here for? 31 minutes? I don't want to stop reading. I'm just letting y'all know. So if you got to go somewhere, pause it, come back to it. I think I'm going to keep going. Man, I'm sorry, man. I'm going to just keep going to the end. I'm sorry. I know I'm holding y'all, but it's all good. You can play this on your way to work, on your way back. You can play it later on. You know what I mean? Competent and legitimate authority is power. Competent authority involves the achievement and exercise of social power derived from knowledge and skill, and where behavioral compliance is obtained from the subject in return for his receipt of some benefit or service awarded by the authority. Wrong defines competent authority as authority rests solely on the subject's belief in the superior knowledge or skill of the exerciser, rather than on formal position in a recognized hierarchy of authority. He further contends that competent authority is a power relation in which the subject obeys the directors of the authority out of belief in the authority's superior competence or expertise to decide which actions will best serve the subject's interests and goals. Competent authority or expertise may crucially be used as a mask for social privilege and power exercised by one group over another. It hides social privilege and power because it appears to merely exist to advance the public interest. This sounded more and more like the law enforcement. Moreover, competent authority or expertise, particularly if it is held in high social esteem and is well organized, may use its claims to superior knowledge and skill and to operating in the public interest to legitimate the rule of the powers that be. The legitimacy of their rule under other circumstances may be questionable or denied. Hence, competent authority, if monopolized by one social group, may serve to facilitate that group's social power over a dependent, less competent, subordinate group. In such an instance, the latter group may be relatively unaware of the extent and the degree to which it is dominated by the former. Even if it is aware, it remains relatively powerless to the degree to which it lacks or does not exercise expert knowledge. European Americans monopolized the positions of competent authority in addition to monopolizing the means of certifying, legitimating, and delegating such authority. They, through racial discrimination against blacks, monopolize the means of gaining access to competent authority. They make use of these monopolies not only to demand the obedience of subordinate Africans in America, but to justify the legitimacy of their preponderant power over them. Moreover, they utilize their monopoly and competent authority to both obscure from and legitimate their social power, its exploitative, oppressive nature, and intent upon Black Americans. or blacks in America. The legitimacy of competent and other forms of white authority to which Africans in America voluntarily submit and or freely give their consent are but special cases of the overall legitimacy of white power they have been conditioned, seduced, and otherwise compelled to accept and believe is morally justified. Legitimate authority refers to a power relation in which the power holder possesses an acknowledged right to command and the subject an acknowledged obligation to obey. The source, rather than the content of any particular command, endows it with legitimacy, induces willing compliance on the part of the person to whom it is addressed. Wrong, 1988. That's who wrote that. Authority can be said to be legitimate to the extent that it conforms to established rules, to the extent to which the rates used to justify it are based on shared beliefs or norms and are based on the express consent of the subject. Example, on the extent to which the subject consents to the particular relations of power which the exercise of such authority requires. That was Beetham, 1991, Beetham. The norms which constitute a legitimate authority relationship are generally shared with a larger group community to which both the person exercising that authority and the person subject to it belongs. Interestingly, as Wrong notes, submission to legitimate authority is widely regarded as voluntary and based on consent rather than on coercion, and yet at the same time is felt to be mandatory or obligatory. We must keep in mind that the legitimate authority and the power relations it entails are based on the acceptance by those who submit to it of certain beliefs, values, rules, and modes of giving. Example, voting. The functional superiority of legitimate authority as a form of power is delineated by Wrong. Thusly, this is what he says. Legitimate authority creates far greater reliability of anticipated reactions than the other forms of authority, just as internalized social norms ensure more reliable conformity than norms, the observance of which is more dependent on situational sanctions or ad hoc negotiation over their meaning and applicability. Legitimate authority is more efficient than coercive and induced authority in that it minimizes the need for maintaining means of coercion in constant readiness, continual surveillance of the power subjects, and regular supplies of economic or non-economic rewards. For these reasons, naked, that is coercive, power always seeks to clothe itself in the garments of legitimacy. Or as Franz Neumann puts it even more strongly, those who wield political power are compelled to create emotional and rational responses in those whom they rule, inducing them to accept implicitly and explicitly the commands of the rulers. Let me repeat that again, because I know you probably thought I said something about voting, but that was him right here. And I'm going to repeat that last line and remember that they were using voting as an example in the above paragraph. Those who wield political power are compelled to create emotional and rational responses in those whom they rule, inducing them to accept implicitly or explicitly the commands of the rulers. To a significant degree, Africans in America accept and obey predominant white American power and its authorities because they agree with the rules of their establishment and expression as defined by white Americans, share with white Americans the moral, legal, and other values and perspectives which justify them, and to some extent, because they have been permitted by white Americans to participate in political and social processes by which white power is given legitimacy. To a limited degree, Africans in America have been permitted access to certain positions of competent and legitimate authority. These factors contribute mightily to their acceptance of white American power, also known as domination, and the white American monopoly of positions of authority as legitimate. These forms of giving consent to the social power status quo on the part of blacks help to obscure as well as deny the fact that they are in fact a dominated and severely exploited group regardless of class, and helps to obscure the fact that their uncritical acceptance of the rules, morals, beliefs, perspectives, and their customary traditional participation in the American/white political economic process and system is tantamount to the legitimation of their own oppression and to the consensual assurance of their own powerlessness. Rules, beliefs, and consent are manufactured by those in power to justify, legitimate, and serve their interests. In its origins, white American power was not legitimated by Africans in America who, at the time of its origination, were held in captivity, slavery. And to this point in time, we have been largely excluded from significantly participating in American legitimation processes. From the historical point of view of the Native and Africans in America, white power in whatever form is illegitimate. This is because such power rests essentially on the near physical and genocidal decimation of Native Americans, the theft of their properties, on the exploitation or the forced labor enslavement of Africans, and on the systematic exclusion by whites of both Black and Native Americans from the authority in the United States. The rules and beliefs which provide the means for legitimating white power were in fact pre-established, preordained, and imposed on Blacks against their will by whites from the beginning. The illegitimacy of white American power is founded on the illegitimacy of its original sins: genocide, theft of property, and enslavement. It is apropos to note here a very telling statement made by Beetham in regard to power and legitimacy. My eyes are still blurry. The occupancy of property, the development of a hierarchical division of labor, or the establishment of a command structure, authority structure, can occur, and historically frequently has occurred, through acts of forcible appropriation, exclusion, or subjection, which take place in violation of existing rules or outside of them, even those promulgated by the usurpers themselves. Such usurpations cannot be legitimate. However, the resulting power relations typically become consolidated and perpetuated through the establishment of rules which underpin and give legal form to the original usurpation. From that time on, subsequent positions of power come to be derived from the rules in the same way those whose rules originate through custom or agreement. Although the memory of the original usurpation may be kept alive, with the passage of time, the issue of the rules' legitimacy becomes less a question of their origin than one of the ongoing character of the relationships they embody and the nature of the requirements they impose. Here lies the reason why power is not necessarily legitimate, and even when it is legally valid. That legality constitutes only one dimension of its legitimacy. It is a necessary but not a sufficient condition for it. Emphasis added. Our questioning of the legitimacy of white power, particularly white American power, does not amount to a call for the overthrow of the American government. However, it does amount to a call for Africans in America to critically examine the origins and functions of the rules, morals, values, customary attitudes, and behavior, common perspectives, and folkways they have been convinced to accept as the result of white American physical and coercive impositions, ideological propaganda, and conditioning procedures. Uncritical acceptance of Eurocentric rules, morals, customs, and so on by Africans in America hides from them the fact that, despite the norms and values they share with white Americans and which serve to legitimate the American social, political, economic system, white Americans possess a preponderant and dangerous power advantage over them. The power advantages of whites place them in positions to deny blacks political and economic freedom and survival at will, and enables them to engage in an almost unimpeded genocidal attack against blacks whenever it may suit their power needs to do so. This is the reason why black people can't be racist. We can be prejudiced, we can be biased, but we can't be racist, because in order to be racist, you have to have the power to deny a group of people political and economic freedom and survival at will, and enables them to engage in an almost unimpeded genocidal attack against blacks whenever it may suit their power to do so. That's bro, I'm gonna have to call him back in a moment. The establishment Whatever rewards it gives us will also, if necessary, to maintain its control, kill us. Let me repeat that because he keeps reiterating that, and I need you to get that. The establishment, whatever rewards it gives us, will also, if necessary, to maintain its control, kill us. Therefore, the very vulnerability of African Americans to the arbitrary and injurious application of physical force and coercive power, legitimating competent authority, and other forms of power now possessed by white America should in and of itself motivate them to as rapidly and judiciously as possible neutralize such power. This is necessary to Black political economic well-being, let alone Black biological survival. The failure of Black Americans to gain access to and fill significant numbers of positions of power and influence in America is not the result of a large number of Black individuals who lack initiative, drive, etc., but is ultimately the result of the nature of the power relations which inhere between white and Black Americans. White Americans, and hypocritically projecting the American political economic system and opportunity structure as egalitarian, example, as colorblind and race neutral, justify their monopoly of positions of influence and power in terms of their superior individual characteristics, training, experiences, and much else. In other words, according to dominant whites, there is nothing wrong with or racially discriminatory about the white-dominated social system. Only something wrong with the individuals. The largest percent of those who happen to have something wrong with them just happen to be Black. Many Black Americans give consent to this line of reasoning, notwithstanding Beetham's observations in this regard are well worth noting. However, it is a notable feature of power relations that they are themselves capable of generating the evidence needed for their own legitimation. Thus, the evidence of superiority and inferiority, which justifies the inequality of condition between dominant and subordinate, is largely the product of that condition. I'll repeat that because I stuttered so much. Thus, the evidence of superiority and inferiority, which justifies the inequality of condition between dominant and subordinate, is itself largely the product of that condition. Those who are excluded from key positions, activities, or resources are thereby denied the opportunity to acquire or demonstrate the capacities and characteristics appropriate to their occupation or exercise, so justifying their subordinate position. This is true even where relatively open processes of selection are at work. Once the selection is performed by an education system, which is given the task of preparing children differently for their respective future roles, evidence about the fitness or appropriateness of people to exercise power thus tends to be structured by the relations of power themselves, and therefore to have a self-fulfilling quality about it. If we look finally at consent, then we find that it is precisely the lack of some key resource or skill deriving from the rules of power themselves that leads the subordinate to voluntary acceptance of their dependency upon the powerful, to their conformity to established rules, and to giving their consent to the particular power relation. The conditioned consent to ideological acceptance and behavioral conformity of Black Americans to white American political and economic domination as legitimate are designed to blind them to the fact that they can only gain access to and occupy a very significant number of positions of influence and power by creating, developing, and applying ideological action perspectives which go beyond and stand outside the existing relations of power, their supporting social customs, traditions, and arrangements. If Blacks are to empower themselves, they must question white-originated and self-serving rules and ideological justifications for establishing and maintaining white domination as a legitimate expression of power consented to by Blacks themselves. These rules and ideological justifications must be directly challenged or subverted by Blacks in order to enhance and exercise a Black power counter to white power. Even if the American political economic system is now colorblind or race neutral, which most assuredly it is not, the counterfactual situation occurred after almost 3.5 centuries of white racial prejudice toward, I need to repeat that. This counterfactual situation occurred after almost 3.5 centuries of white racial prejudice toward an oppression of Blacks. It was during this long period that whites developed and accumulated the collective cultural, social, political, familial and individual capital that their domination of blacks afforded. These accumulated advantages are used by whites, even in a race-neutral egalitarian society, to provide themselves with further huge advantages compared to blacks who have suffered 3.5 centuries of accumulated disadvantages. A contemporary race-neutral society, in terms of its neutrality alone, would in no way resolve the problem of gross inequalities between whites and blacks. In fact, such a society would function only to maintain, if not in actuality, enhance them. Blacks must develop means of overcoming white socio-political and socioeconomic advantages, regardless of the racial status quo. All right, I'm gonna start there and I'm gonna finish the chapter with part 4. I appreciate you for joining. Make sure you go into the description, grab those free resources. If you don't know how to use those free resources, go ahead and click the link on Black Stocks too. I learned so much through those guys when it comes to stocks and my mind is elsewhere, so I'm not really focused on the stocks, but buying and selling puts and call actions. And I know that's not exactly what it's called, but if you're familiar with trading options, you know what a call option is. You know what a put option is. So go ahead and check that out, man. It's really dope. I appreciate you for joining. Please like, share, subscribe. Hotep family, race first at all times, and at all times, race first. I leave you with Hotep, which is unshakable inner peace. I hope your today is great, and may your tomorrow be greater. Hotep family.